Air cylinder adjustments. To increase the return force, add air pressure to the cylinder. This is accomplished by moving the pump ball handle located at the bottom of the air cylinder from the downwardmost position to the upwardmost position. When the pump gets near the top of its travel, resistance can be felt. As the pump is moved to its most upward position, air will be pushed from the pump into the cylinder compression chamber through a check valve. Once the air is pushed through the check valve, the pump stroke is complete and should be moved back down to the downwardmost position. Repeat the pump process until the desired pressure is shown on the pressure gauge. Each pump stroke, all the way down to all the way up, will introduce 3 to 5 psi into the cylinder and will be reflected on the gauge. The higher the pressure in the cylinder, the more resistance will be felt when the pump reaches the upwardmost position. When playing the pedal, the pump handle should be in the downwardmost position. When pumping up the cylinder starting with zero pressure in the cylinder, it may be necessary to depress the pressure relief valve rubber ball to reset the ball. If the ball is not seated properly in the relief valve, the pump will not be able to charge the cylinder. If the pump is still not charging the cylinder, press your finger or thumb over the pressure relief valve to seal it from leaking air. Pump up the cylinder 2 or 3 strokes and then quickly remove your finger from over the relief valve. The air pressure inside the cylinder will help seat the relief valve so that the cylinder may be charged with the desired pressure. To decrease the return force, depress the rubber ball on the pressure relief valve. The pressure relief valve is located directly below the pressure gauge. Depressing the relief valve ball lets air out of the compression chamber. A decrease in pressure should be seen on the gauge. It is possible to bleed a small amount of pressure out of the cylinder by pushing lightly and quickly on the pressure relief valve. When the cylinder is charged at higher pressures, it will be more difficult to depress the ball on the pressure relief valve. This is because the pressure inside the cylinder is pushing the ball into the seat with greater force. The pressure gauge provides the ability to see exactly how much pressure is inside the compression chamber. Unlike a spring pedal, the gauge provides the drummer with the ability to set the pedal to the exact pounds per square inch desired. As springs age, they lose their original force. Setting a spring pedal to the same position does not result in the same force calibration due to the spring stretch and wear. The pressure gauge provides the exact amount of force in a repeatable manner, regardless of temperature or age of the pedal. It is important to not overcharge the cylinder. When the pedal is in its neutral or starting position, 120 psi should not be exceeded on the gauge. Starting pressures over 120 psi will result in premature failure of the cylinder diaphragm. The gauge will reflect the increase in pressure as the beater moves towards the bass drum. Lower starting pressures will result in about a 20 psi increase on the gauge as the beater travels towards the bass drum. Higher starting pressures will result in about a 40 psi increase on the gauge as the beater travels towards the bass drum. If you look at the gauge movement, you will see that the gauge increases more slowly in the first half of the beater's travel and then ramps up more quickly just before the beater hits the bass drum. This illustrates the hyperbolic function of the air return versus the straight line function of a traditional spring pedal.